Hi, everybody. Welcome to actNOW. I'm Julianna Forlano. Today, in addition to our headline segment, where I am going to go down with you a bunch of videos and a bunch of ideas and a bunch of thoughts about a tale of three speeches, the State of the Union, followed by, which we just saw a couple days ago, followed by the Republican response, which I like to call the State of the Confederacy, followed by something quite different this time, a working families response by Representative Rashida Tlaib, where she laid out that party's vision and she urged Democrats to really deliver for the people. So that's kind of exciting, kind of a new turn of events. And as I've been doing over the course of the last few weeks, we're going to be highlighting another unbought, non-corporate sponsored candidate running for a congressional seat. This guy really has a chance, and I think you're going to be interested and possibly even love him. Muad Hrezi from Connecticut's 1st District will be on. He's going to give us what he thinks the State of the Union is and maybe a little bit of his response to the situation in the Ukraine. All that and more. I've got a little opinion I want to give you at the end of the show, so stay tuned, starting with the headlines. We're starting off this headline segment talking about the State of the Union, the Republican response to the State of the Union, and something that happened that was quite different. The working families put up a response by Representative Rashida Tlaib, where she laid out that party's vision, urging Democrats to deliver for the people. Stay tuned. Well, this was the first State of the Union I was able to sit through in the last 4 years. Yeah, I have to say, President Biden is easy to watch. I found President Trump just unwatchable, not in his presentation, but in the evil. I really thought evil that was coming through, bombarding me at the screen. And I didn't necessarily see that with Joe Biden. I was able to watch it. I was able to listen to what he said and actually think, I wasn't short-circuited in my mind. Although I am a little short-circuited today. I'm going to put that right out there because, number one, I stayed up late watching the war. Number two, I stayed up late thinking about these State of the Union addresses that happened. And then, as you would know, if any of you have kids, there's just these random nights that they just stay up all night for whatever reason. And then here you are. So we'll do this together and it'll be fun. All right. First off, you may or may not like some of these opinions I'm about to say, but let's go with it, right? So first off, we're going to talk about one of the things Biden said. He said in his State of the Union, this is not like the major portion of his speech, but he said a very important thing. The Biden administration is going to prioritize going after criminals that have allegedly stolen billions in COVID relief funds that were meant for both small businesses and individual Americans in COVID era programs like the Paycheck Protection Program and the Unemployment Insurance Program. Biden said this during the State of the Union. His actual quote is, in my administration, the watchdogs have been welcomed back, which is nice. I like that. He said, we're going after the criminals who stole billions in relief money meant for small businesses and for millions of Americans. Now, this is what I think is interesting. Maybe you heard this already, but Governor Kim Reynolds, throw up the photo of Kim Reynolds, John Carlo. Governor Kim Reynolds, who is from Iowa, who gave the Republican rebuttal or response or whatever to the State of the Union address. I mean, she is under investigation for improperly using $450,000 in COVID funds for salaries for her staff. Yes, that is true. So I don't know. To me, the fact that he called that out during a speech, it's not like it was a big surprise that this Iowa governor was going to be giving the rebuttal. He called that out in his speech, and then he's letting us, the journalists, do the hard work and the not so hard work of pointing a finger at the absolute corruption that is happening on the Republican side. Okay, there's Democratic corruption as well. I get it. But I just thought this was him showing the spine that we're always looking for from Democrats. He just set us up perfectly. Anyway, State Auditor Rob Sand of Iowa said in a review that the state's payroll system shows that the money was used to pay for office staff for that Republican governor. Very exciting. Anyway, the rest of the media has been saying that Reynolds represents the face of the GOP that the party leaders want to put forward into the midterms. A soft-spoken conservative mom. She said mom 500 times. She's got, I think, 11 grandkids, which totally shocked me. And she said, mom, used to work at a grocery store. Mom, small town, rural roots. Just like you, is anxious of how out of control things feel. She said, quote, we're teetering on the edge of a major global conflagration. Inflation is rampant. Racial activism has taken on a vaguely threatening aura. She also said that she was worried about what her kids are being taught in school. And I think she was actually right about that. We are all worried about what our kids are being taught in school. Different sides to that issue are worried about different things. I've been worried since they started teaching intelligent design in the science classes. But hey, there we are. I'm not going to make you sit through any of her speech because honestly, it was just like some talking points. And it came on 20 minutes after Biden gave his speech, which rumor has it he was working on right up until the last minute because there's constant breaking news, constant breaking events with what's happening in the Ukraine. And he wanted to, get that, make sure he had all the right things to say at that right American moment. Her speech was pretty much already written. So it stayed, it was boring. It was ridiculous, and I don't even understand why we need to have a rebuttal speech when by the Republicans when we have an entire propaganda arm of the corporate state who is going to give a rebuttal speech. Anyway, the State of the Union. So this is a cool thing that was happening. Let me get this for you. So Representative Rashida Tlaib laid out the party's vision at this, it was like a people's conference in DC. Hold on, let me pull it up. I have Tlaib's speeches. I have some other speeches here. And as I said, I'm so tired that I think I might have forgotten to, I might have forgotten to bring my list. Give me 1 second and I'll get it. Here it is. My beautiful, beautiful piece put together by Rebecca here at actTV. God. Okay. So the Center for Popular Democracy and CASA, an immigrants' rights activist in DC, held a People's State of the Union on Monday, the day before Biden's State of the Union, in an effort to share what they called the state of our lives. Working people and BIPOC folks spoke about the inaction of the Biden administration on a number of issues and the urgent need for relief now. And yesterday, Tuesday. I'm losing track of the days, people. Rashida Tlaib gave the Working Families Party response to the State of the Union, and she laid out her vision, again, urging Democrats to deliver for the people and rallying progressives to an, all-in midterm election on the election front. Okay, so we have a couple of videos here. The two videos up front are from an activist, Hwang Chen-yu, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, of the National Korean American Service and Education Consortium, spoke about the U.S. military expansion under Biden, NATO's expansion, and the war in Ukraine on Monday. You talked about examining the U.S.'s role in escalating tensions abroad and its harmful impact on marginalized communities. Let's take a listen.
The administration continues to expand the U.S. military. Whether globally or within the United States, we condemn the expansion of the U.S. military as it only increases harmful consequences of war and destruction. This conflict did not start last Wednesday, but rather resulted from the historical buildup between Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and NATO expansion. Destruction most heavily impacts Black, brown, poor, and working-class women and communities. If the U.S. is genuinely concerned about taking moral and just path, we must examine our own roles in escalating conflict and harming others.
Okay, so I made my position known on Tuesday about this. You know, the whole idea of NATO expansion is to open up markets for the arms industry. So I think we could fix this whole thing by making the arms industry not for profit, right? All of that money, I think it's 17.7 billion that Lockheed Martin made in Q4 of this past year. And that was after Afghanistan had wound down, right? Q4, 1/4. That's how much they make in profit. That's above operating costs. I pointed this out before, but it bears repeating that would be a very good way to kind of slow down the sale of those arms, make all those arms manufacturers pull them off the stock market so they can't be publicly traded. Give the people who work there, because we are going to use arms. This is the world we live in. Give all the people who work there making the actual things on the factory floor a living wage and healthcare and all the things they need. And anyone who does administration, also known as executives, but they'd be knocked down to administration, could have an administrator's salary of no more than 10 or perhaps 20% of what the floor people are making. And then any profit that is made goes right back into social programs here in the United States or peacekeeping missions, both here or abroad. Boom, problem solved. Problem solved at the root. This is you again on Monday, speaking about Biden's promises, which he believes are empty promises, and extremely harmful, which are empty promises, not just he believes, his harmful policies on immigration. Let's take a listen.
We're here today to talk about the State of the Union as experienced by the people. What can we say about where we are now? The election of President Biden offered hope for immigrant communities, yet 1 year later, we have yet to see completion of his promises. It's a choice of Biden to complete his promises or to let his words remain empty and meaningless. Instead of addressing the root causes of violence against Asians, like addressing mental health and safe housing needs, the Biden administration and Congress continues to purport xenophobic and McCarthyist fears, further endangering Asian communities. A pathway to citizenship has yet to be created for millions. When 1 out of 7 Asian immigrants is undocumented, this failure's harm upon our communities cannot be overstated.
I mean, he said it best, but we do have a guest coming in, and I'm going to bring him in right in the middle of this segment. I know we usually do headlines, then guests, but this is the perfect entrance point for my guest today, who is running an unbought, non-corporate backed candidacy for Connecticut's first district for the U.S. House of Representatives. You may remember that I worked with Marianne Williamson and a number of other progressive and liberal online news hosts and pundits on this thing called Seize the House, which we streamed right here on actNOW. And Muad Hrezi was one of the people I was lucky enough to be able to talk to that day. And I'm so thrilled that Muad is able to join me here today. Muad, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, how you doing, Julianna? Nice to be with you.
I'm good. I'm exhausted, but it's hard to from watching the war and watching everything that's going on, but it's hard to complain when there are women giving birth in bomb shelters and, other horrific things happening across the world. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy we're having this conversation today.
Same here. Yeah, it's the state of the country, the world is, I think, definitely shaky right now. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of concern, and I think that's been the case for quite some time, and has only been getting more and more kind of challenging. So hopefully we will enter a new era soon of more prosperity, stability, peace, kind of all the things that I think the majority of people, global citizens across this world want to see. So.
Well, I'm very happy that you're running right here in my home state of Connecticut. This is very exciting. You are a first-generation American, one of 6 children born to Libyan parents who came to America as asylum seekers, settling again here in Connecticut. You studied public health. You were a victim, shall we call it, of a horrendous public health system that almost let you die because your family had a medical debt that was not paid when you needed emergency care. Talk a little bit about your path to running here in Connecticut. And then I'd like to hear, your particular ideas about, we were just talking about Biden's immigration policies. What would you do? What will you push for if and when you get in when it comes to immigration?
Yeah. So my journey to run for Congress probably begins with my parents, who came here, like you said, from Libya as asylum seekers, and raised me with a deep understanding that we shouldn't take our liberties and our freedoms for granted, and that democracy is a verb and it's an action, and you have to do it every day, and you have to try to make your country, your community, your state better by engaging in that civic process. But the older I got, the more I started to see how politics played its role in my life, my family's life. So at 17, I was delayed healthcare, nearly denied healthcare, because my parents owed $20,000 of medical debt for a surgery that my mom needed to save her life, even though we had good employer insurance. That kind of puts a hole in the argument of employer sponsored insurance here in our country. But yeah, when a healthcare system in the world's wealthiest country nearly kills you as a 17-year-old, it kind of forces you to reckon with the way we have constructed and established systems. And so I just was forced to become introspective and reflect. And the more I looked at things, the more I realized that we have a system dominated by special interests, whether it is health insurance companies, hospital systems, pharmaceutical companies, or the military industrial complex. But wherever you looked, you would see some special interest essentially putting millions, if not billions of dollars to promote an agenda that was often in opposition to what average Americans wanted. And so that felt like a system that is rigged and not honestly conducive to bettering people's lives. And so just having lived on this planet for 27 years and feeling like things are not going well, and we're facing some existential crises such as climate change, and now there's, we're starting to see more and more of democratic backslide in our country. It felt like there might not be a tomorrow to be fighting for, and so now is as good a time as ever to get more non-corporate backed candidates in Congress.
Absolutely. And you're not just coming in off the university campus to run. You worked for Chris Murphy as a policy staffer. He's a U.S. senator from our very fine state here of Connecticut. And you also you also studied public health, which is a very important part. Talk a little bit about, again, I want to revisit the immigration issue. Where are we today under Biden, and what would a truly progressive agenda look like?
Yeah, so I worked for Senator Chris Murphy, and actually one of the policy areas I handled for him was immigration policy. So I kind of got to take a look under the hood at our nation's immigration policy. And honestly, I can say it is one of the most gut-wrenching areas that I worked on. Just seeing families and the traumatic experiences that they had to go through to come to this country, oftentimes fleeing situations in Central and Latin America that are unimaginable, and running to the land that they imagined would welcome them with open arms, the land of refugees, the land of liberty. But instead, we're ripped away from kids. We're handled at gunpoint. We're treated like terrorists in a sense, and just gone through a really horrendous experience. So what should our immigration process look like? Well, for one, I think we should just keep our commitments to human rights and international law. Anyone who's seeking asylum should be given the ability to go through the asylum process without being treated like a prisoner or like a fugitive from the law, because that's what international law requires, and it makes sense. And we have great ways of this common argument that you're gonna let them go into the middle of the country and they're never going to show up, and you have this system where you can't keep track of things, is a complete farce. We have really effective ways with just simple caseworkers and checking in on people to make sure that we are keeping track, and if there are any kind of nefarious forces that are trying to make their way into this country, that we can handle those and we can still be compassionate. It's not an either or. But one, we should allow asylum seekers to come here without treating them terribly. We should grant a pathway to citizenship to all the dreamers and all the DACA recipients who've known this country as their own, in the same way I came here when I was one and have only known America. And we should have an immigration process that doesn't just try to pick from certain parts of the world, but essentially opens our doors and says, if you want to come here and you want to create a pathway to prosperity, we'd love to welcome people from across this world who can enrich our country, make us competitive, And I think that the world has so much to offer, and we should be excited that people want to come to America and try to utilize this positive image that the world has of us.
Well, we're looking at, not to get too weird on you here, but we're looking at climate change. We're looking at wars. We're looking at humanitarian crises popping up all over the world. How does that affect? How does that affect immigration policy here at home? It's not like you can just say, okay, all of Ukraine can come and all of the Maldives can come and all of everyone in Central America where we destabilized all their governments can come. How do you respond to that argument? Like, what's the response there? I think progressives get called or get called out for having this unrealistic idea of what's going on in the world and that we can welcome everyone. I could see how we could be compassionate, but I don't know if we can really do that and remain the kind of country that we are.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not really doing well economically right now.
Yeah. So the best policy when it comes to climate refugees and refugees from situations of war is, one, not to start wars abroad and try to maintain a sense.
That is a good way. Yes.
So just trying to avoid those crises and also to combat this climate crisis in a serious way. Instead of trying to heal wounds, just don't create the problems to begin with. So I'd say that's probably the first step. If we pass that 2 degrees Celsius threshold, what we do know is that human civilization as we know it is not going to look the same. And so I think let's not even try to kind of imagine what that world looks like, and let's try to avoid it. But for the current people who are going to face the effects of climate change and who are currently fleeing really dangerous situations, I think that it is a myth that the U.S. cannot absorb large amounts of refugees. So we saw in Germany, 1 million Syrians were accepted. They are thriving there. Folks can read about it. They've done a lot to expand the economic productivity. America is a huge country. We tend to forget that. We have large swaths of our country that are essentially barren without much going on. So we have more than enough space. We have the world's strongest economy. Typically, refugees provide an injection of economic growth. You do have to kind of put some investment early on, but the dividends are there. So I think we can be compassionate. We can grow our economy, and we should also make sure that we're trying to avoid just extreme amounts of human migration through climate change and war, if we can, by investing in peace and prosperity and climate solutions.
Well, this brings us right to an excellent segue, Muad, to the situation in the Ukraine with war between those two countries. Can you give us your thoughts and comments on what is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll even kind of take a step back, which is I come from Libya. A lot of people don't know what's happening in Libya right now. So Libya is kind of going through a civil war where we have a U.S. citizen who is a dual citizen between U.S. and Libya, who's causing a huge amount of chaos. He's essentially a warlord, but actually backed by Russia. So he's backed by Russia. The Wagner Group, which is operating in Ukraine, is in Libya as well. There has been a whole lot of destabilization that has happened in Libya because of Russia.
Tell the people who the Wagner Group are.
So the Wagner Group is founded by a neo-Nazi. It is essentially the mercenary arm of the Russian government. It is the group that they send out to avoid being held liable for any war crimes or damages. So it's a mercenary group that's closely affiliated to Putin. And so they're active in Libya. We've also saw Russia essentially destabilize Syria by supporting Assad. And so my point is that Russia has been at this for a while, and oftentimes I think the U.S. hasn't taken enough of a stance against what Russia is doing in Europe and the world in general. And so Putin has been given a green light every time to continue causing chaos. And so what we're seeing now in Ukraine is, I think, the kind of evolution of his aggressive world posture. And now it's reaching the shores of Europe. And obviously that has, I think, larger ramifications for the U.S. But I think that this could have potentially been addressed earlier on had we taken a stronger stance against Russian aggression. But also, I think that the U.S. needs to reflect on what have we been doing to potentially provoke this. So I think a lot of people are looking at NATO now, and there is a litany of policy experts who've said that the more NATO expands, the more that will be used by the Russian government to essentially do something like invade Ukraine, and that they can gin up support for something like this in their country, and that they actually see it as a threat, having U.S. missiles and rockets right next door, in the same way that the U.S. government probably wouldn't like it if Russia put rockets in Mexico, because we remember what happened when they put them in Cuba. So,
question for you. I don't know if you know this. Does Russia buy U.S. weapons?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it would be very hard to actually see that happening, given that us selling weapons to Turkey, U.S.-made weapons, as well as Turkey having Russian-made weapons, was a huge problem, and the U.S. got in a big kind of fight with Turkey about that. So I don't think that we'd probably sell any weapons to Russia.
Just wondered about that.
Yeah, I don't think so. That would be almost impossible based on everything I know. But what's happening in Ukraine is really sad, and it's, I think, just continuing this trend that we're seeing of more and more global war happening. We see the Middle East has been caught in wars for a year, and now it's slowly been moving up, closer to Turkey, and now it's Ukraine. So I'm concerned for our world. I really wish that we can invest more in peace.
This brings us right to the green energy economy. I often argue that if we had a green energy economy and a self-sufficient green energy economy, we really wouldn't have stakes in these wars.
Yeah, that is true. We would have much less of a stake in these wars if we were more energy independent and used renewables. But also the other thing is that, Putin has been dominating his country as a dictator, and essentially he's been running a country that's a gas station that makes a lot of money, that enriches him and his cronies. And the best thing that we want to do, if we want a strong stance against Russia, I don't think necessarily NATO is the best route of doing that, NATO encroachment. Instead, we should make the world more reliant on renewables.
Exactly.
And that essentially depletes his resources and wouldn't keep us kind of held in a kind of a jeopardized position where we don't know if we should cut off the faucet of oil that's coming from Russia to Europe and to the U.S. So yeah, I think that would be a great national security strategy, and also a great strategy to protect our world. So. Yeah.
Let's talk about your campaign. I remember when I was talking with you on the Seize the House fundraising stream that we did. We talked about the incumbent in your district, and how he is getting lots of corporate money from both in the district, but also all over the country. Like, corporate money is flowing in to keep these corporate candidates in their seats, as opposed to you, who's, doing a grassroots candidacy. Talk a little bit about what your opponent is been standing for, how he's funding his campaign, and then in opposition, what you stand for and how you're funding your campaign. Yeah.
And to even set the stage, so the incumbent I'm challenging is the longest sitting incumbent without a primary challenge in the country. So he was first elected in 1999, has never faced a primary since then, and this is a Democratic stronghold. Is
he shocked that you came up? Did he?
I imagine he's maybe a little insulted that somebody would challenge his reign, but I'm not entirely sure how he's taking it. I just don't know. He's not very happy, is what I hear. But democracy is a contact sport, and I think what I tell his supporters are, if you believe he's a great candidate, this is the best thing that's happened in 23 years. He'll have to prove it on the election day. Yeah, but so
good one.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. Because you're running in Hartford has a tale of two cities behind it. It has and the two cities are very much split. There is people who are struggling, and then there are people who are doing just fine working for the insurance industries. Go ahead. I'll just throw it back to you talking about that.
Yeah. So longest sitting incumbent without a primary challenge, the fifth highest recipient of corporate PAC money out of all the House Democrats. He receives over 90% of his dollars last cycle were from out-of-state contributors. So just
who? Do you know who they are? Like, is it war machine people? Is it insurance people? Pharma? Who are we talking about? Oil and gas?
Every single one of those you mentioned. So defense
Ugh.
contractors, pharmaceutical companies, health insurers, Wall Street folks. But the top three industries are health insurance, Wall Street, and defense contractors. So those are the three biggest contributors to his reelection campaigns every single cycle. And what I believe is that if you take $2 million from health insurance companies, it is impossible for you to actually be fair when it comes to doing the people's work and trying to create a healthcare system that operates on the best interest of the American people. Anyone I think who disagrees with that is either being dishonest with themselves or with the public. It's quite clear. So that's who I'm challenging. And like you said, there's a tale of two cities right here in Connecticut, in Hartford, but also across this country. We have an economy where half of our country makes less than $35,000 a year. And now three people own more wealth than the bottom half of Americans. We see that right here in Hartford, where we have huge amounts of segregation, not even just in Hartford, in our state. We have some of the wealthiest suburbs in the country. And then we have like a student I talked to just a few weeks ago who was telling me about in his high school in Hartford that they couldn't access their library for 4 years because they didn't have enough funding for a librarian. So, that kind of, I think, is emblematic of the challenges we face as a country, a resource-rich country, but unable to access those resources because of gatekeepers. Students having books that they can't even read because we don't want to fund a librarian is just devastating.
And also, what about the paucity of imagination? Okay, you can't fund a librarian. All right, if that's even true, which it probably isn't. How about we let those students train them in how to work the library? I mean, it's not that hard to do. Do they still do the Dewey Decimal System? I don't know. But like putting the books back, taking them out, letting them have a little agency in, God forbid we should let our students learn that they can take action and make their place better for themselves and their community members.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, I think, striking lessons that can be gleaned from that story, but it is just just a glaring challenge. How do we have it in the world's wealthiest country, in probably one of the wealthiest states in the country, that high schoolers can't access a library?
What's up with
a lot of challenges.
Oh, you got me on an exhausted day, but I've been really enjoying our conversation. It's probably a little looser than you remember me on the on the other stream, but I do appreciate you coming on. Final words, how can people help you and your campaign? And also, before that, why is it so important to get people who are non-corporate candidates? You touched on that a little bit, but I'm going to hit you the softball and I want you to knock it out of the park.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's the only way I believe we save our democracy and save our planet. I used to work for Chris Murphy. I was in Congress. Oftentimes when you're trying to advocate on behalf of people, there is always a special interest there lobbying on the other side. And so unless you have non-corporate backed candidates who are willing to challenge these special interests, then we're just going to continue down this track of two Americas, one that has immense resources and one that is being neglected. And so I think it's important because we need to save our planet. We need to provide for the American people. And I think that if we continue down this road, there's going to be so much voter apathy, and we're just going to continue down this path of an oligopoly that one day we're just going to wake up and the democratic heartbeat within our government is going to be essentially dead. So I fear for that day. And I think that right now we're at a huge kind of juncture. And I hope that we start electing more candidates who don't take any corporate money.
Thank you so much for being on the show. You can see it's Hrezi.com, Hrezi. It's right there at the bottom. You are accepting funds from outside of your district. So I encourage everyone to send money.
Send money. If you can volunteer, if you're within the district, we're getting closer and closer to election day, 5 months left. And once the weather warms up, we'll be out there. We already are, but we'll be, recruiting heavily. So if you want
Can people do phone banking if they're not in the district?
Exactly. If you're not in the district, you can phone and text bank. So we have an option for everyone. And we would love people's support. And what I say about this campaign is that I think it's just a reflection of what we as people want. So I believe that people want a government that works on their behalf, and we've been seeing a whole lot of support. And so if you share those values, then please join our efforts. Find a way you can help out, not only to this campaign, but to other campaigns. If there's another one that is in your district or in your area or that you really like, find a way to help out. And I think that, a people's revolution is on its way. And I'm excited for it.
Muad, when you get in, would one of the first things that you could please work on is campaign finance reform? Because we could work on this as a systemic issue as opposed to each unbossed, non-corporate candidate having to dig themselves out, from under in every race.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are a couple of things that would, I think, really unlock the power of our government, and campaign finance reform is, I think, the cornerstone of that. So, yeah, I'm excited to hopefully get elected. And then the next step is figure out how we can get more non-corporate backed candidates into Congress.
And you're close. I'm not bringing on some far long shot. This guy right here is close, and he needs your support. So thank you so much for being on the program. We'll continue to follow your campaign, support you any way we can. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Julianna. My pleasure.
All right, you're watching actTV. I'm going to take a brief breather, a quick moment, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to continue our rundown of the Working Families Party rebuttal to the State of the Union. It was actually a pre-buttal. Anyway, we'll be right back. All right, you're watching actTV. That was a great interview. If you're just joining us, Muad Hrezi from Connecticut's 1st District, running a non-corporate campaign. All right, let's get back to it. We were talking about a tale of 3 speeches, as I like to call it. There were 3 speeches: the State of the Union speech, the State of the Confederacy speech, which again, I won't force you to sit through any of, and then the progressive response to Biden's speech. It was actually a pre-response, which I think was kind of interesting. And we're going to jump off into that by talking about Biden's actual speech itself. Okay, in case you missed it, Biden discussed community policing, ending chokeholds, ending no-knock warrants. I mean, he kind of went down a list of things he was going to do or trying to do. I don't know if he was just signaling or what. He talked about equal justice under the law. He discussed holding law enforcement accountable, funding violence interrupters. But what he did say, and I quote, is, no, we're not going to defund the police. We're going to fund the police. Fund the police. So let's take a listen to what Biden, and he set off a shitstorm. So, and possibly well-deserved shitstorm, but also I believe a politically brilliant shitstorm. So let's take a listen to what he said, and then we'll talk about it.
I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Mora was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works: investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities.
I was like, oh, Twitter is going to be really pissed off about this. And it was, because Twitter requires you to be very brief. And the only thing that got picked up on, as far as I could see, was the fund the police. And then it was a fight between fund the police and defund the police. But I think what he did was politically brilliant, because Fox News is painting him as first he went through and he said a whole bunch of the things that I named earlier about that people want, that people who are fighting against police brutality and injustice on that front actually want, right? He named a whole bunch of those things. And then he said, fund the police. And you can't take back those three words. And Fox News, has been smearing him with this defund the police as if it's a smear brand. And I think he was basically just fighting back against that. He also mentioned the American Rescue Plan, that it's going to invest more in the police, that he wants the police on his MF side. That's what he wants. That he wants the police on his side. I think it's a good idea if cops who are going more and more toward the Republican side of thing, and therefore they'll be even closer to the SS than some of them are now. I could be wrong, but I think it's a good idea to appeal to that section. And I personally think what he did was brilliant. Now let's see what the policies say. Let's see what he actually does. But that rhetoric, I thought, was a good idea. Republicans don't want to support the American Rescue Plan. Not one voted for it. Not to mention, we have our own traitors, Manchin and Sinema, which of course I just mentioned. So basically by saying fund the police, he was hitting Republicans in the cops. That's where he was hitting them. Now, Cori Bush, of course, said that she often uses the defund branding. And she also said, I don't care if you call it defund, reallocate, move, switch, push, or transfer money. What we're saying is we have to do something different in order to save lives. And then she went on to say, we don't need all these militarized weapons in our communities. What we need is to put that money into social services. What we need is to expand 911. It's very interesting. During the rest of his speech, he talked about the social services that he was going to be expanding, early child care, schools, etc. And I think he also played into the fact that a lot of people are scared. And when people get scared, they want this idea of order. But I think he was trying to get this idea that his whole speech was about supporting working people. Now, that said, we're going to hear what other folks are saying about how he could, with a stroke of a pen, just support working people by getting rid of our student loans and a whole bunch of other things. We're going to talk about that in a brief minute. But a lot of what he said was about supporting working people. And I think this whole fund the police business was about bringing the police back into the working people, having police and working people be one people again under possibly the banner of Democrats. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to see. DeRay McCresson, he was an author and activist, tweeted, the police shouldn't receive funding because of their lack of accountability and protection for the community. That's how one of the activists that I found was saying. But so in response to Biden's fund the police statements, Representative Rashida Tlaib from Michigan spoke about the real path to community safety. And she spoke of it in a way that I think is just so beautiful, just such if we were able to speak about in this way about care, a care community, and have that person be a leader, I think if we're on our way to being able to talk about the care community, I think Biden is a good bridge to that, actually, because we went from Trump the autocrat to a soft older gentleman in his presentation, getting people ready for maybe someone like Tlaib or someone else who might be able to speak in a soft way about having a more beautiful care-based economy. That would be awesome. Anyway, here's her response.
Nothing is more important than keeping the people we love free from harm. and we all deserve to be safe in our neighborhoods. The path to community safety is investing in what people need to thrive, like access to jobs, quality education, and real opportunities. We can't police away homelessness, poverty, or mental health crisis in our country. Care, not more criminalization, is how we ensure lasting safety for all. And we should end the war on drugs, fund legal defense, and enact criminal justice reforms like ending qualified immunity that would transform our discriminatory legal system.
Beautiful. Yes? Representative Tlaib spoke about the various executive orders that President Biden can take to deliver for the people as well. Here she is.
Biden can use his executive power now to take action, to deliver for the people. He can cancel federal student loan debt, which would be a lifeline for millions of Americans and a transformative economic stimulus. And he can ban federal fossil fuel leasing, drilling, direct federal agencies to reject permits for new fossil fuel projects, and regulate carbon emissions. He can fix our labor rules right now to allow more workers to access overtime pay. And he can change how we calculate the poverty line so that more Americans become eligible for life-saving federal benefits. And he can take action to break up pharmaceutical monopolies that make life-saving medicines affordable.
I mean, right? Are we snapping in the background? I think we are. That was beautiful. So here's the thing that I see, though. I saw 3 speeches. Stick with me on this if you can. I know I might be all over the place today because of lack of sleep and concern about thermonuclear destruction and really being torn apart by what is happening in other countries to people, as we all are. 3 speeches, 3 different speeches, 3 different people. It just really seems like we're going to have to somehow come together. And I don't really know how that's going to be. How is that going to happen? Because polarity leaves the space for fascism to march straight through. I mean, so when I went on Twitter, and I'm going rogue off the script here. I went on Twitter and right after State of the Union, and I was watching what my friends say and what other people say, etc. And it was like people, I mean, Biden said things like, I'm getting rid of no-knock warrants, and people just tossed that aside and said, he said fund the police. And they had like a rhetorical argument. Maybe that's what Twitter's for. They had a rhetorical argument. And it reminded me, and then on the other side, there was no like, oh, well, actually, let's have a measured response. You know, people are out of the freaking minds on both sides, probably because what we're facing is so terrifying and everyone is coming from their limbic system now and not able to come from the brain part where you can make logic and higher level functioning thoughts happening. Anyway, it reminded me of something that was said by someone that I had the grace of connecting with. He was 19 years old when he was one of the first people to liberate the camp at Dachau, the concentration camp there. And he was a cheery fellow. And he wasn't giving a speech. It was just, I was in a private setting and people were asking him, how does, after seeing so much atrocity, after living through so much atrocity, how is he able to keep his sense of joy, his sense of life? How does he see this? How does he deal with atrocity on the daily basis? And he said he forces himself to appreciate one thing on every horrendous ghoul. And then he shouted, I like that button, in a tone that suggested he was just about to follow that sentiment up with, you son of a bitch. But he said, I know this is a little off, right? This is a little off. He said, stay with the button. You have to pick one thing where there is unity, because in unity there is power, and it allows for connection, and through connection is where things actually get pushed forward. Now, I know this is an abomination of things to say on the internet, like that we actually have to connect with the people that we might really truly disagree with. But if you look back over the course of the show, it's what I did. The Republican lady, this one here, Kim Reynolds from Iowa. Yes, I am also concerned about what the kids are being taught at school. We have different concerns, but overall, I'm concerned that they're taking out history out of school books. She is concerned that they're leaving it in. Whatever. Okay, so we both share that concern. President Biden, he said he wants to fund childcare. Okay, I can stick with being okay with that. And Rashida Tlaib said a care economy and a whole number of other things, and I'm good with that. So I just want to, encourage everyone to put the goddamn batons down and pick up a weapon that actually might work. Place of strength that you can actually start from, that we can all start from. Remember the button. Thanks for watching. I'm Julianna Forlano. See you next time.